The future is a magical kingdom. It is the home of hope, promise, and potential. The beauty of a flower lies not in its seed, but in its blossoming, not in its past, but in its future. So it is with us. Our most glorious days lie not behind us, but before us. For life is about endless growth. Hi, I'm Cynthia, a 5th grader at Gilbert Magnet School. On this edition of the Flood Channel, we will learn about the past, present, and future of how we are being protected from flooding.
Great job! Hi, I'm Betty Hollister, Public Information Manager with the Regional Flood Control District, and welcome to another edition of the Flood Channel. And thank you, Cynthia, for helping me introduce the show. First, we'll visit with Clark County Commissioner and District Board Member Bruce Woodbury, who's been with the district for more than 20 years. Then we'll look at some of the very first flood control projects that were constructed to discover what we've accomplished so far and what's planned for the future. After that, we'll look at our ongoing efforts to educate you and your family about flood safety. All that and some great Did You Know tips from our friends here at Gilbert Magnet School on this past, present, and future edition of the Flood Channel.
I shall shape the future, whether I fail or succeed. Shall be no one's doing but my own. I am the force. I can clear any obstacle before me, and I can be lost in the maze. My choice, my responsibility. Win or lose, only I hold the key to my destiny.
Welcome back to the Flood Channel. Commissioner Bruce Woodbury has been called the father of flood control. He was instrumental in the formation of the district, and he's been a board member since our creation. As the father of 7 and the grandfather of 15, he really knows the importance of protecting our community from flooding for generations to come.
Well, when I became a county commissioner in 1981, there was no flood control district. There was really no flood control program. You had the county, and you had each of the cities doing a little public works project here and there. They would ask developers to do flood studies on new projects, but there was no coordinated effort. Each of the entities were going off in their own direction. There were no detention basins, no major flood channels, and we paid the price over the years. And it was not too long after I came into office in 1981 and into 82, we had some big floods. And we went to the legislature, and they authorized us to go to the voters in 1986 and to put it on the ballot and get the people to vote yes or no on whether to have a quarter-cent sales tax to fund the program. The bottom line was, in November of 1986, the voters said yes, and we were really on our way to doing something about flooding in southern Nevada. Everything has to be coordinated. Everything has to be tied together in an integrated program, and it's worked very, very well. And we continue to have flooding. We get major storms every few years, but because of the facilities and the program, the damage has been minimized. Now we still have hundreds of millions of dollars worth of projects still to do over the next at least couple of decades, if not well beyond. And this program has to continue, because if we don't, a lot of the newer areas and even some of the older areas will be vulnerable to devastating flooding and to the kind of property damage and endangerment of lives that has been the case in the past before we had the program. So I've seen the downside, the real devastating effects it can have on people's homes and lives. I've seen the good side, the progress we've made. I've seen the ribbon cuttings of huge detention basins and and been in neighborhoods where there have been celebrations for the completion of flood control projects. People that had to deal with the insecurity, the feeling that once again our neighborhood's going to get flooded. Now they knew it wasn't going to happen again. And it hasn't happened again in any of those neighborhoods where our projects have been complete.
Well, Commissioner Woodbury is an individual that we find far and few between. He is such a unique human being, not only as a public servant. He has given the majority of his life to Southern Nevada, not only in flood control, but RTC and leadership on the county commission. But in particular, back when people were talking about the devastation of the floods and what are we going to do and how are we going to handle this growth, it was Bruce Woodbury in his own modest way that said, let's solve this. Let's come together as a community. Let's create not a Clark County board. Let's create a Southern Nevada, a regional approach to address this problem. And he was the one that really forced the legislation to take place, created the funding mechanism, and then brought the member agencies. And today, it's a lot easier to understand how the city and the county and North Las Vegas and Henderson and Boulder City and everybody gets along because we've been forced into that role as a regional community. But 20 years ago, when that was discussed, it was so territorial and there were so many jurisdictional boundaries that it needed a voice of reason and of leadership to say it's wonderful that politically we can talk about issues that we agree on and disagree on, but when it comes to flood control, floodwaters don't have jurisdictional boundaries. Mother Nature doesn't pick one city versus the county. And it was that voice of reason in a growth area that there was a lot of conflict and competition for dollars that Bruce Woodbury established himself as the father of flood control. And that is from the creation of the district to where we are today. It's under his leadership, under his guidance, under his vision.
Well, over the years, some people have called me the father of flood control because of my being the first chairman of the Flood Control District Board and hopefully provided the leadership to take the program to the people and get it approved and implemented and started. I think now it's probably more, if I could say I'm the grandfather of flood control, maybe the great-grandfather. I appreciate the people putting up with me all these years in office, and you know, it's something I do feel good about that we've achieved, and we've set the stage for a lot of future progress as well.
You know, when we talk about how we had fun when we were children, it was a small town then, and it's grown so tremendously fast. And all these new neighborhoods that they were getting flooded back then, but it was just desert. But now there are homes there and neighborhoods that have been devastated. So this rapid growth has made a huge difference in the amount of flooding that took place over the years. And that's one of the reasons that, you know, Bruce spearheading this has been so tremendous, because you all know how difficult it's been to keep up with the growth in terms of highways and every other thing. But nobody was thinking about flood control.
You will not find a better human being than Bruce Woodbury. Not only for the public service that he has given, but how many people he has mentored, how many colleagues that have sat on boards with him, myself included. When I was fortunate enough to be appointed to flood control and the Regional Transportation Commission, Bruce was the first one I went to because of his institutional knowledge, because of his approach to public service, and he does things for all the right reasons. He's been a great teacher, great colleague, and truly deserves every credit and kudo that comes his way, because back when it was difficult to do so, he cut through all the jurisdictional conflict and reached a regional solution, and that vision and that voice stays with us today and is why we have been so successful as an agency.
Well, I'm very proud of Bruce. Obviously, he's had to sacrifice a lot of his family time to do everything that he's done, but he really loves the community. And, you know, from time to time when he's had to decide whether to run again or not, and he's asked my opinion, you know, I always say, well, as your wife, no, But as your constituent, yes, because I love what you're doing for our community and for our children and now our grandchildren. We feel that it's been able to stay on a road of progress that will benefit people, and it's not just gone up hodgepodge. There's been a lot of planning, and that he's been instrumental in.
Well, there's really no reason to be in public office unless you're working to make your community better than it was before. And at the end of the day, when I leave office, I want to be able to look back and in many different areas be able to say, yes, we were able to make a difference, and we were able to help people. Not only in flood control, but in a wide variety of areas. But flood control is very, very important. And I have 7 children, and I have 15 grandchildren, and most of them live here locally, and the ones who don't are planning to move back. And this is our home. Rose and I were born and grew up in southern Nevada. And we love this community, and I feel so much safer for my family and my community, more secure, and that the quality of life is that much better. And we need to keep working to make sure that we complete the program in the future so that that partial reality becomes complete reality.
After the break, we'll take a look at one of the very first projects completed by the district and another one that's under construction today to protect you and your family tomorrow.
Tim Szymanski here with Las Vegas Fire and Rescue, and I'm asking you to talk to your children about the dangers of flash floods. Water in our flood channels can rise several feet in just minutes. The force of just a few inches of that water could easily knock a child over, putting them at risk for drowning. Every year during flood season, our rescue crews are called out to save kids from flood water. This year, help us keep your children safe. Teach them that playing in rain is a dangerous game and that flash floods can be deadly.
This message brought to you by the Regional Flood Control District, FEMA, Project Impact, and the City of Las Vegas.
Hi, my name's Hunter, and you're watching the Flood Channel. Did you know that flooding causes more deaths than any other weather-related disaster? And that washes and detention basins can turn into raging rivers within moments of a severe storm? Flood-related deaths can be avoided. Teach your mom and dad to head for higher ground and never play in flood waters.
I want to show you some pictures your parents probably wouldn't want you to see. Pictures of parents making big mistakes. Here's someone's dad doing something foolish. He's actually trying to drive through a flooded street. Here's another. And another. Every summer we get flash floods, and every summer the same thing happens. And hey, if all this water can do this to a car, imagine what it'd do to a kid. Look, don't be foolish. Flash floods kill. Tell your parents.
A reminder from the Clark County Regional Flood Control District.
Now is the accepted time, not tomorrow, not some convenient season. It is today that our best work can be done, and not some future day or future year. It is today that we fit ourselves for the greater usefulness of tomorrow. Today is the seed of time. Now are the hours of work, and tomorrow comes the harvest.
Welcome back to the Flood Channel. More than 20 years ago, the residents of Clark County voted to tax themselves to protect families, homes, and businesses from the devastation of floodwater. Carrie Ann takes a look at one of the very first projects built by the district. Every story has a beginning, and for the Flood District, this facility here in North Las Vegas at Craig and I-15 was one of the first projects built to protect families in the area from flooding.
When the district was first formed, through the leadership of Bruce Woodbury, people didn't understand flood control. They were saying, why do we need flood control in the desert? It never rains, and certainly the catastrophic events in the early 80s almost forced the issue. But again, with Bruce's leadership, that started the district, and there were a lot of question marks when the district was first created and we received funding through the quarter-cent sales tax. People were skeptical. I mean, is this another one of those government boondoggles that's just going to create jobs and build things that aren't necessary? But it became apparent very quickly the mandatory need for these type facilities.
In the past, there was no unified approach to controlling floods here. It was all piecemeal. And floodwaters do not recognize entity boundaries. It just takes the path of least resistance. So back in the early 80s, after some major flooding, there was a need recognized by the local elected people to go to Carson City and get laws changed to allow us for the creation of the district.
Started out as a vision, it became a reality, and when the results started coming up, when people started seeing how we could literally control floodwaters and protect families, protect property, the mission became entrenched. It's become part of the culture at the district now. It's a very simple mission, but so critically important. And it's simply to go out there, educate the people as far as what flash flooding can do in the desert, and protect them, protect their lives, protect their property. And that remains the foundation of our organization.
Some of the first projects that were built were projects along the Las Vegas Wash, on the western trib of the Las Vegas Wash, Van Buskirk area in the county, near Pecos and Flamingo, a community that flooded bad all the time with little rain. So we took care of those hot areas first while looking at the whole regional picture.
There's an acceptance now, and that success, that incremental success as we build out our system, builds the credibility and changes that perception where people have become far more aware. And certainly seeing things built by government that are successful and they work and they serve a purpose builds that confidence in the public. The Charleston Underpass was always our nemesis. It was literally the poster child. Anytime, certainly when a storm hit in the area, it backed up, shut down traffic, just made a mess of not only the underpass itself, but the business corridors, the surrounding residential areas. But now, because of the facilities that have been put in place, we've had some major storm events, and that has remained bone dry, which more than anything else, it's become symbolic of the success of the district. That remains probably the highlight of my tenure on the board, because it was such a spot in the community that everyone knew if it rained, that the first picture on the news that night would be the Charleston Underpass.
As we look into the future, we have to look to the past first. And in 20 years, we've completed 75 detention basins and over 450 miles of channel and underground storm drain that are protecting not only areas within the Las Vegas Valley, but projects that are down in Laughlin all the way up to Mesquite, 90 miles south and 90 miles north of here. But with that said, we still have 30 years to go. We are building these as quick as we can, and that's why it's so important to get our flood safety message out to everybody in this community. And I think that's one thing when you look at the past to the present to the future. We've really taken leaps and bounds in getting our flood safety message out.
Well, when we started out back in the mid-'80s, I think if we talked back then that we'd spend $1.2 billion and 75 detention basins and 450 miles of channels, people would say, wonderful, we're done. What a success story that would be if we were talking retrospectively. But today, with the growth, we're playing catch up. We are keeping as close to the growth curve as possible, and right now we think we're only halfway there. We anticipate over the next 15 to 20 years building out an additional $1 billion plus in facilities and trying to serve what then was probably 500,000 people, upwards of 2 million today, and could very well approach 3 million. So we are constantly in motion. I mean, there's no time for us as an agency to slow down. There is no slowdown. As long as that growth is there, we are able to, through our efficiencies and through the partnerships with the member agencies, we're able to continually build out the system, and that's what's critically important, that we don't fall too far behind.
I've been with the district 20 years, almost exactly 20 years today. And I always look at what happens when I leave and some of my staff leave. I think that the documents and the procedures that we put in place as far as our master plans and updating them every 5 years, our regulations, our criteria that's been in place since '91, those are all the foundation for whoever takes over in the future. We've looked at twice now the benefit versus cost of us implementing these projects for the future. And it's for every dollar we spent, this community will reap $2 in benefits. So I think the reason we're here, the foundation is there, and that somebody can pick up these pieces and run with it in the future to continue to complete that master plan and meet our mission and achieve our vision.
I've always felt that our success will be measured not today with what we've done, and perhaps not with those residents that are living here today, but when we look out 15 or 20, 25 years down the road, when ultimately we can build out our system. It's that community that will look back to 2008 and ultimately back to 1986 and say, thanks to Bruce Woodbury, thanks to the people at the Flood Control District, we have created this infrastructure that gives us a safe community, protects us from what used to be devastation, loss of lives, millions of dollars of property damage. So our report card will come a couple decades down the road when people are able to look back and say, it was a success story.
Currently, the district has 75 detention basins and more than 450 miles of channel and underground storm drains. Those facilities, like this news channel here at Lamb in the 215, help safely pass water through the area and away from homes and businesses. Now, while the district has accomplished a lot through these construction projects, there's still a long way to go. The district's story is only halfway finished. Betty? Thanks, Carrie Ann. After the break, we'll take a look at the importance of educating our children about flood safety and protecting the environment.
Hi, I'm Fox 5 meteorologist Aaron Peck, and I'm standing in a flood channel. You've probably seen plenty of these flood channels across the county.
Most of the year they're dry, but when it rains here, these channels fill with water real fast. In fact, during a heavy rainstorm, water in a channel like this can rise several feet in just minutes. The same can be true for floodwaters on roadways.